My name is Alex, and I never thought a single glimpse could unravel everything. I remember slipping into our shared apartment that evening, the hallway light flickering like a warning. I'd been stuck late at the coffee shop where I worked, my barista apron still tied around my waist, the scent of espresso clinging to my hair. My phone buzzed in my pocket, his name, Ryan, blinking insistently. I hesitated, tracing the edge of the doorframe with my thumb, heart thudding in a way that should have been excitement. Instead, it felt like dread. I stepped inside, boots tapping softly against the living room rug, and froze. There they were. Ryan was sitting on the couch, leaning forward, hands clasped between his knees. Across from him, Mara, my best friend since childhood, sat with her head bowed, hair spilling forward to hide her face. The glow from the table lamp painted long shadows, turning their silhouettes into something ominous. My breath hitched, a cold knot formed in my stomach. I cleared my throat, and they both looked up. Mara's eyes widened, and Ryan's face twisted, surprised, guilty, and scared, all at once. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey," he said, voice too casual. "You're home early." "Yeah," I replied, setting my bag down. I tried to steady my voice, but it wavered. "I closed shop at 9. My gaze flicked between them. "What's going on?" Mara's cheeks burned pink. She swallowed, lips trembling. "Alex, she stopped, words failing. The silence stretched, heavy as fog. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, then leaned back and exhaled, soft and broken. "We need to talk." I felt a tremor ripple through my limbs. Memories flashed, the late-night study sessions when Mara would crash on our couch, sharing jokes and old photographs. The times Ryan and I had crowded around the kitchen table planning road trips and weekend escapes. Those memories felt like lies now, rough edges cutting into my chest. "I thought we were all close," I whispered, voice tight. "Why does this feel like I just walked into someone else's life?" They exchanged a look so familiar, one I'd once envied, and something in me snapped. My hands curled into fists at my sides, fingernails digging into my palms. A flood of nausea rose as I realized how deep their secret must run. Ryan stood and moved toward me, but I planted my feet. "Alex, please. Don't," I cut in, voice sharper than I intended. "Just don't." My heart pounded in my ears. "How long?" Mara pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. "A few months," she confessed, eyes glistening. "We didn't mean. It just happened." My pulse thundered. A laugh, hollow and broken, escaped me. "A few months," I echoed. "Months of pretending." I felt tears sting the back of my eyes, but I blinked them away. Guilt and disbelief tangled inside me, turning my throat to sand. I turned and grabbed my jacket from the hook by the door. "I need air." My voice was distant, like I was watching someone else speak. I slammed the door behind me, muffling their apologies and his pleading words. Outside, the night air was cold against my cheeks, pinpricks of rain beginning to fall. I pulled my hood up and started walking, each step echoing with every promise they'd broken. I wandered until the city lights blurred, feet carrying me without purpose. My mind replayed every laugh we'd shared, every secret I'd whispered into their ears. It felt like digging through rubble, hoping to find something solid beneath. By the time I returned, hours had passed. Our door was still closed, lights dimmed. I leaned against it, breathing hard, and I realized something had shifted. The world I'd known, the comfort of friendship, the warmth of love, had splintered. I could feel that splintered edge, sharp against my heart. Inside, their voices were muffled, apologies laced with regret, promises to fix what they'd broken. But my resolve had crystallized in the cold rain. I wouldn't let this be the end of me. I'd gather every fragment of truth, messages, photos, late-night receipts hidden in his coat pockets. I'd trace their betrayals back to every careless moment, every whispered secret. I pulled my phone from my pocket and stared at the dark screen. In that silence, I made my decision, would not beg for their forgiveness. I would not let them off easy. I would find a way to make them understand how deep this cut ran, how it echoed in every corner of my life. With a steadying breath, I flicked the screen on and opened our chat thread. The cursor blinked at me, waiting. I typed a single word, and then another, each one a step down a path I never wanted to walk. When I hit send, the echo of that betrayal followed me into the quiet apartment, settling like dust in the air. And as the door clicked shut behind me, I knew the moment had come to start unraveling everything, because the end of my trust was only the beginning of my reckoning. I stepped back inside, the door clicking shut felt like the last lock sliding into place. The apartment was too quiet, only the hum of the refrigerator and the faint tap of rain against the window. My jacket draped over the chair, and I barely noticed it. My hands shook as I flicked on the table lamp, its yellow glow revealing the coffee cup I'd left half empty last night. I sank onto the couch where they'd sat and drew in a shaky breath. Every memory of laughter here felt stained now. My pulse pounded as I pulled out my phone and thumbed through our group chat, just one screenshot, one fragment to start. I found it, Ryan texting Mara about a surprise meeting he never mentioned to me. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. I saved it. Something in me snapped, like a switch flipping. I grabbed my laptop from the dining table and set it on my knees. The search was methodical. First, her social posts, tagged photos, then his work emails from the folder I still had access to. Each click sent a jolt through me, stomach twisting. I felt feverish, compelled to keep going, to sift through the debris of their betrayal until I'd found every hidden truth. An hour later, I leaned back, screen full of messages, dates, and receipts, hotel bookings under her name, his credit card statements detailing dinners she'd never mentioned. My chest tightened, and I closed my eyes, hand pressed to my sternum where my heart felt bruised. My breath was shallow, uneven, and I could almost hear it echo in the room. A sudden ping jolted me upright, an email notification. It was from an address I didn't recognize, subject line, "I think you should see this." My fingers hovered, heart racing. I stared at the sender's name, someone who'd been tagged in one of their group selfies, a mutual friend I barely knew. My pulse hammered. Hesitating a moment, I clicked. Inside was a link to a voicemail file. My stomach lurched. I downloaded it and pressed play. A muffled voice, familiar in its tone, whispered things I never thought I'd hear, him apologizing for lying to both of us, her voice in the background, tears slipping into her words. They weren't just meeting, they'd been planning something together, something I couldn't yet fully grasp. My hands trembled so badly I had to grip the edge of the couch. I shut the laptop with a snap, the sound startling in the silence. Heat flushed my cheeks. I stood and began pacing, mind racing through every moment we'd shared, the road trip he'd promised, the nights she'd spent, studying, on the couch. Every one now felt like a calculated step in their secret game. I sank back down and texted the mutual friend, "Thanks. Meet me tomorrow. I need to understand what this means." My fingers hovered over send. I paused, imagining their faces when I confronted them with proof. Part of me trembled, afraid of the cruelty I was about to unleash, but another part burned with cold purpose. I shoved my laptop closed, the apartment plunged into darkness except for the streetlight glow through the curtains. My phone buzzed again, Ryan, calling. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Then I pressed decline. As I slipped into bed, sleep wouldn't come. My mind replayed the voicemail, the glint of betrayal in her tear-streaked voice. Somewhere deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Tomorrow, I'd face them both, armed with every shred of evidence I'd collected. And when I did, nothing would ever feel safe again. I woke before my alarm, chest tight, every thought looping the voicemail's final words. The sun hadn't fully risen when I slipped out of my apartment, the door clicking softly behind me. My hands still shook as I fumbled with my phone, rereading the message I'd sent our mutual friend. The coffee shop where we'd agreed to meet was quiet, the front lights glowing pale against the morning mist. I pressed my palm against the cold glass, breath fogging the surface. A figure appeared inside. The friend, whose name I still wasn't sure I spelled correctly, waved me in. Their office was cramped but warm, papers stacked on every surface. I perched on the edge of a swivel chair, heart pounding so loud I wondered if they could hear it. They slid a manila envelope across the desk. "Open it," they said. Inside was a printed photograph, edges worn. It showed Ryan and Mara at a lakeside dock late at night, her head resting on his shoulder as he brushed a strand of hair from her face. The moonlight glinted off the water, casting them in a silver glow. But the proof was in her jacket pocket, a hotel key card with a date and room number printed on it. My vision blurred as I traced the key card stamped room 312. My voice stuck in my throat. My legs felt weak, and I gripped the chair arms until my knuckles turned white. I leaned forward and whispered, "When was this?" 2 weeks ago, the friend replied, offering a second item, a printed screenshot of their group text conversation. The screenshot showed Ryan messaging Mara at midnight, "Tomorrow, 9 p.m., room 312. We'll talk." Her response read, "I'll be there. Don't forget the extra key." The words glowed on the page like betrayal. My pulse hammered, and I could taste metal in my mouth. I tapped my chest, where my heart fluttered like a trapped bird. I thought they met at the cafe, or studied together. My voice cracked. The friends shook their head, sympathy in their eyes. "They lied about everything," they said quietly. I sat back, breath ragged. The photograph and the text felt like two knives twisting in me. I folded the photo and text and slid them into my jacket pocket, each movement deliberate. I could feel droplets of sweat on my forehead. The friend watched me. None of us said anything until the silence roared in my ears. Finally, I stood. My legs wobbled, but I straightened up. "Thank you." My voice was low, distant. I walked out into the street, the documents burning holes in my coat. The autumn air was crisp, but I felt fevered inside. I wandered to our apartment building, trying to steady my thoughts. I imagined Ryan's excuses, Mara's tearful apologies, but none matched the stark clarity of proof in my pocket. Every step felt heavier, burdened by what I now knew. My jaw was locked, mouth dry, and I clenched and unclenched my fists until my nails dug into my palms. When I reached my door, I paused. I had two choices: confront them now or wait and gather more. The photograph trembled against my thigh. My vision tunneled on the pic of them laughing by the dock. My breath caught. I pressed the key fob and the door clicked open. Inside, the lamp was still off, and the apartment smelled of stale coffee. I turned on the light and saw they'd left the mess from yesterday, my laptop on the table, the coffee mug, his running shoes by the door. I could almost hear Mara's laughter echoing off the walls. I closed the door gently, heart slamming against my ribs. I looked down at the documents in my hand. The weight of them seemed to shift, calling me to action. I inhaled, feeling the cold air fill my lungs, chest expanding with a mix of dread and resolve. I placed the photo and text on the coffee table, centering them as if they were jury exhibits. My reflection shivered in the window behind. I stepped back and drew in a breath that rattled through me. The stage was set. They would step in soon. And when they did, I sank onto the couch, letting the rising tension coil in my belly, and then I heard the key turning in the lock. They step inside, and the world tilts. I stand by the coffee table, back straight, fists clenched. The lamplight hits the photographs spread out before me like evidence. Ryan pauses in the doorway, eyes widening. Mara's hand hovers over the doorknob behind him, her breathing shallow. "Alex," he starts, voice unsteady. The name tastes bitter on his tongue. I don't move. My heartbeat thrums in my ears, every nerve alive. Mara glances at me, tears glittering. Her mouth opens and closes, searching for words. I lean forward, the chair groaning under me, and fix them both with a calm stare that belies the storm inside me. "You walked in on my trust," I say softly. "I'm giving you a chance to explain." Ryan rubs his wrist. It's complicated, he murmurs. My jaw clenches. I lift a photograph. Explain this. I hold up the lakeside image and the key card. Her face blanches. His gaze flicks between the pictures and my eyes. They stumble back into the living room, closing the door behind them. Rain taps at the window, punctuating the tension. Each drop sounds like a question. Why didn't you stop? How could you lie? Mara steps forward first. Her voice is small. Alex, I never meant to hurt you. We lost control. Lost control? I repeat, voice hollow. You planned it. You texted at midnight. You took a hotel room under her name. Mara's shoulders tremble. She grips the back of the couch. It wasn't just passion. I thought it could fix something broken between us, with him. I was lonely, hurt, her voice cracks. I imagine her sitting on this same couch, laptop open, pretending to study. Each sigh she gave me now feels like it was meant for someone else. Ryan steps closer, eyes shining. It started with small secrets, and then we convinced ourselves it was okay. But we were wrong. So wrong. I stand and circle the table like a predator. My palms itch. The muscles in my neck are taut. You're telling me now? I ask. After months of lies? He swallows. Yes. I stop behind them both and breathe in the stale coffee scent, the faint perfume of her hair. My knees wobble. Part of me wants to collapse, part demands a reckoning. Do you even realize what this means? I whisper. My voice breaks. Everything, us, our plans for the future, shattered. They exchange a panicked glance. Mara reaches for Ryan's hand, their fingers brushing. I feel nausea rise, taste metallic bitterness. I step forward and shove the table so hard it scrapes across the floor. Photographs and receipts flutter like wounded birds. They scatter across the rug. Mara gasps. Ryan's face flares red, a mix of anger and fear. I drop to my knees, sweeping photos into a pile. My breath comes in sharp pants. My hands are slick with sweat. I ball the evidence into a fist. I rise, holding the pile above my head. Tell me you're sorry, I demand, voice hoarse, and mean it. Ryan's voice cracks. I'm sorry. Mara nods, tears streaking her cheeks. I'm so sorry, Alex. Their apologies hang in the air, thin and fragile. I stare at them, waiting for sincerity. Silence stretches. Finally, I drop the pile to the floor. Papers scatter. This isn't enough, I say, stepping back. I need time. I need space to figure out what I want next. My heart pounds with each word. Mara blurts, please don't shut me out. Her voice is desperate. I press a hand to my chest. My skin tingles where her words land. I can't make promises. Not now. I turn away, moving toward the hallway. My legs burn. They stand in the living room, dwarfed by the scattered evidence. I slip on my jacket and head for the door. Before I leave, I glance back. My reflection in the hallway mirror is stranger than any ghost. I touch the cold glass. This is only the beginning, I say. The door clicks shut. Raindrops slide down the window. My footsteps echo down the hall, carrying me into the dark. I walked through the empty hallways, rainwater dripping from my coat onto the linoleum floor. The city felt asleep, but my mind was wide awake, humming with every crooked smile they'd shared behind my back. My apartment door clicked behind me, and I slipped inside without turning on the lights. The scattered papers lay like fallen leaves, and I knelt to let my fingers brush over their edges, proof of betrayal that already felt too heavy to carry. I didn't reach for the phone to call Ryan or Mara. Instead, I sank onto the couch and closed my eyes, letting the darkness cradle me. My chest constricted, and I felt the weight behind my sternum, the the sad, raw ache of someone who'd been traded like a keepsake. But grief was only the first knock at the door. Behind it stood something colder, a clear-eyed determination that whatever came next would be of my own making. Later, I found myself at the cafe where I'd worked late nights, the same one I'd used as my alibi for sneaking out. The barista's station was spotless at dawn, and I sat at a corner table, the air tasting faintly of steamed milk and lingering espresso. My fingers wrapped around a mug, heat seeping into my skin as I laid out the photos and text printouts again. I traced Mara's tears in the image, Ryan's awkward posture beside her, and the midnight messages promising rendezvous. I let the memories sting, each detail fueling something in me that buzzed like an engine revving up. I opened my laptop and started a new file, Project Reckoning, I typed, almost laughing at my own melodrama. But it felt right, giving a name to the path I was about to carve. I listed what I knew, dates, times, witnesses, itineraries. Then I wrote what I needed, the moment of truth, the fallout, the payback that would slap them with every hidden lie. I paused when the words, "I will expose you," hovered on the screen, feeling my pulse spike. Yes. Expose was exactly the word. By midday, I had a plan. I'd reach out to everyone they'd whispered with, friends, co-workers, the barista who served them coffee before their secret meetings. I'd frame it not as an accusation but as a search for the truth. Something's off. Can you help me understand? Their uneasy silences and stammering replies would build a case so airtight they couldn't deny it. I closed the laptop, heart pounding with that delicious rush of control. The betrayal had cut deep, but I'd turned that wound into the sharpest tool I owned. I stood, sliding the photos into an envelope addressed simply, to all concerned. I tucked Project Reckoning in my bag, shoulders squared, and left the cafe. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky was a pale, bruised gray, and the city stretched before me, endless possibilities waiting to shift the balance. I let out a slow breath, cold resolve filling my lungs. I stepped out onto the sidewalk, rain-cleared air clinging to my coat. The envelope bulged in my bag, Project Reckoning rattling like a secret heartbeat. Each step toward the first recipient felt alive, the city humming around me. I paused outside the cafe where Mara used to drown herself in textbooks. The windows were dark, but I slid the envelope under the door, fingers trembling as I felt my pulse spike. I traced a breath through my teeth, tasting copper, then moved on. One by one, I delivered the packets. Mara's neighbor who'd nodded politely at them entering my apartment, Ryan's coworker who'd offered him coffee before that stolen midnight meeting, the barista who'd topped up his latte with that signature swirl. With every drop, my stomach churned, guilt curling around purpose. The city lights blurred as I pushed forward, adrenaline and remorse tangled like thorny vines inside my chest. Back home, my apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I sank onto the couch, pale streetlight streaking across my face. My palms were cold, heart fluttered with regret and triumph. I knew exactly how scared they'd be, reading each line, the printed messages, the hotel key image, the declaration that I knew everything. Would they confront one another? Would they sweat through their lies? A shiver traced down my spine. I closed my eyes, recalling Mara's trembling lips when she first confessed, Ryan's hollow, sorry, the way I'd shoved the table. I felt the conflict not inside me, relief that they'd no longer hide, but sorrow that trust was gone for good. My chest ached. My jaw was tight, every muscle in my neck taut. I ran a hand through my hair, pinching the bridge of my nose. Then my phone buzzed. A single message lit the screen, meet me at the dock. Midnight. Come alone. M. My pulse surged. The letter that should have come from her mailbox had now come here, direct. My breath caught in my throat dry. A knot of trepidation coiled in my gut. I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the screen. My mind raced. Was it a trap? A breakdown? A plea for forgiveness? The guilt that folded into me tightened, and I pressed a hand to my chest. My heart dipped, and I felt the hollow ache of uncertainty. I stood and paced, my feet tapping against the hardwood floor. The city clock tower chimed in the distance, though I wasn't sure if it was real or just a memory echoing. The silence pressed in, and I realized I'd been holding my breath. I let it out, slow, and made a decision. I would go. I needed answers, her truth, his guilt, their tangled motivations. I grabbed my keys and a flashlight, tucking it into my pocket. I paused by the coffee table, eyeing the scattered photos left from my planning session. Each face stared back at me with frozen expressions, longing, desire, secrecy. I flexed my fingers, feeling the weight of every choice I'd made. I couldn't turn back now. Outside, the night air was chill. The street lamps stretched their halos on the wet pavement. I moved toward the water, heart hammering with each step. Thoughts tumbled, fear of betrayal, fear of reconciliation, fear of what I might become if this revenge consumed me. My breath came in shallow bursts. When I reached the old dock, it was deserted, a lone light blinking at the end like a distant warning. I paused on the planks, the wood creaking under my weight. Shadows danced across the surface of the water. My flashlight felt heavy in my hand. I could feel my fingertips go numb. I called out softly, "Mara? Ryan?" Only the echo answered. Then a figure emerged from the darkness, a silhouette I knew too well, shoulders slumped. My throat closed. I swallowed, stepping forward. The first act of confrontation was beginning, but already I sensed that the truth they held here would shift everything again. My heartbeat thudded so loud it felt like a drumbeat in the empty night. I lit the flashlight, revealing her face, pale and strained. She lifted her chin, lips trembling. I steadied the light with a hand that shook. "Why did you call me here?" My voice was hushed but firm. She inhaled, eyes glossy. "I need to explain everything. You deserve that." And in the hush before her words, I understood that my revenge had led me to this moment, a fragile chance at a reckoning I might not survive unscathed. I lifted the flashlight, its beam cutting through the mist. The boards beneath my boots creaked. Mara's shoulders slumped, her lips quivered like a wounded bird's. The night air smelled of cedar and river. My heart thundered as I waited for her words, each second dragging with the weight of betrayal and hope. She closed her eyes and inhaled, the sound shaking. "I'm sorry, Alex," she whispered, voice raw and ragged. Her words trembled, but so did something else, an undercurrent of resolve. I saw the reflection of moonlight on her tears, felt the pulse in my throat. My jaw clenched, knuckles white around the flashlight handle. When she opened her eyes, they were red but clear. "I never meant for it to get so out of hand," Mara began, stepping forward. The dock groaned under her weight. "Ryan and we were both lonely. You know how hard it was for me at work. How his kindness made me feel seen." Her voice cracked, the admission slicing through my anger. I remembered her laughter in the break room, the way she'd leaned into confessions about unpaid bills and cold floors. I'd patted her back, said it would be okay. How naive I'd been. "So you chose to run into his arms?" I asked, breath misting in the night. The flashlight light trembled as I gestured at her. She flinched, voice choked. It wasn't just comfort. It felt like safety, until it wasn't. "He stopped telling me things, about you, about us." I realized I'd traded one lonely place for another. She swallowed, and I could almost taste her regret. Her confession pressed into me like cold steel. My pulse roared. I remembered Ryan's hollow apologies, the way his charm had faded the moment I discovered the lie. "And what about the hotel room?" I demanded. "The midnight texts, were those safety?" My voice pitched higher, reflecting the tremor in my chest. I was furious, but I also wanted to understand. Mara's gaze dropped to the flashlight's beam on the dock planks, wet, splintered wood. "Room 312 was the night he said he couldn't face telling you the truth. He thought if we met in private, he could explain. But when we were there," her words trailed off, tears shining. She covered her mouth, as if afraid words would shatter. I swallowed hard. My legs ached. My hands loosened on the flashlight. He lied to protect you? I said, the absurdity ringing in my ears. A tremor of pain crossed her face. I realized the twist. His secret was supposed to help her, not hurt me. Yet it had torn us apart. Mara stepped closer, voice firm despite tears. He's battling something, Alex, a company he works for, pressure, threats. He thought hiding everything would keep me safe, you safe. But in shielding me, he broke us. Her words nudged at the edges of a deeper secret. My adrenaline slowed, curiosity replacing some of the rage. I felt my chest loosen, yet the ache remained. Why didn't he tell me? I asked. Why not trust me? The words spilled, fragile. She bit her lip, lower lip quivering. He was scared, she said. Scared of losing control, of you knowing how vulnerable he was. He thought he could handle it alone. I swallowed again. The river lapped below, rhythmic and indifferent. My flashlight caught the distant city lights glimmering. Betrayal merged with pity, confusion swirling inside me. I realized this wasn't a simple affair. It was tangled with fear, love, and secrets unspoken. My breath came steady now. I turned the flashlight's beam away, pointing it at the sky where mist blurred the stars. So what happens now? I asked. My voice was quieter, cautious. Mara took a shaky step closer, reaching out but stopping short. I want to help him, she said, and I want you to know the truth. I met her gaze, saw her honesty reflected. The dock seemed smaller, intimacy folding around us. My heart pounded, but anger had cooled into wary compassion. The darkness around the light felt less threatening now. I breathed in the cedar breeze, letting tension roll out of my shoulders. What do we do? I repeated softly. Mara exhaled, relief in her shoulders. We face it together, she said. And in the hush of the night, with the river humming below, I realized my reckoning was no longer about revenge, but about the fragile path toward truth. We stayed on the dock a moment longer, letting the hush settle between us like a fragile truce. My heart was still pounding, jaw slack from surprise, but the tremor in my hands had eased into a steady hum. When Mara inhaled, her shoulders rose, and I watched the moonlight dance on her tears, feeling the weight of every secret poised to shift our world again. She rubbed her arms as if chasing off a chill, though the night air had grown warmer around us. I think we should go back, she murmured. Her voice was soft, unsure, like a bird testing its wings. I nodded, swallowing against the dryness at the back of my throat. My mouth felt thick, words sticking. We turned and walked along the damp planks, footsteps sinking in the ghostly glow. The water's surface rippled with our reflections, two silhouettes side by side, uneven but moving together. I kept my flashlight off, letting the street lamp's glow guide us. Each step felt heavy, weighted by questions. How do we rebuild something so broken? And could we? Back at the apartment, the air inside smelled of stale coffee and regret. The lamp I'd left on flickered when I flipped the switch. I turned on the table lamp instead, its yellow pool comforting. Mara sank onto the couch, curling her legs under her. I leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, chest tight. I don't know what forgiveness looks like, I said, rubbing my forearm. My fingers left faint fingerprints on my skin, and I felt the burn of shame. She met my gaze, amber eyes bright in the lamplight. It might look like honesty, she whispered. Her posture was tense, shoulders hunched as if protecting a secret still lodged in her chest. I want to be honest, about him, about us, about everything. I pressed my lips together. My heart fluttered, and I could almost taste the metallic zing of vulnerability. And you think honesty will fix this? I asked, voice trembling on the edge. She nodded slowly. It's the only way I know. I exhaled, a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I crossed the room and sat beside her, careful to leave a gap. My legs felt stiff. My skin prickled with anticipation. Then start, I said, voice low. She folded her hands in her lap, gaze dropping. After a moment, she said, "His company. He's been dealing with threats. Phone calls at night, messages erased. He thought if he could solve it alone, no one else would get hurt. But in hiding it from you, he just hurt you more." I watched her face for signs of performance, but saw only raw fear. My pulse slowed, replaced by a slow burn of empathy. "What kind of threats?" I asked. She shivered, eyes distant. "Corporate espionage. Someone leaked documents he was working on. He started folding me into meetings, but then he lied about it to protect me. It got twisted, and he started lying about us, convincing himself it was safer. But it wasn't." The words settled between us, heavy and hot. I closed my eyes, picturing Ryan's tight-lipped smiles, his jittery glances at his phone. My muscles loosened. The ache behind my ribs softened. "I see," I whispered. My throat felt raw. "And you?" She glanced at me, chest rising and falling. "I got swept up," she admitted. "I thought being with him, in that secret place, meant I could help. But I didn't realize I was just another secret." I inhaled, friction rolling through my lungs. I nodded slowly. "We both made choices," I said. "And we both need to, I guess, choose differently." She offered a small, watery smile. "Together?" I met her gaze, letting my doubts spill into the open. "I'm willing," I said, "but I need time. And I need him to be part of it, too." Mara bit her lip. "I can call him now." I stood, walking to the window that overlooked the quiet street. A breeze rattled the glass. My reflection stared back, haggard but hopeful. I whispered, "Let's try." Her fingers brushed against mine as she rose. A current ran through my arm, tender and frightening. We stood side by side, silhouettes against the windowpane, hearts beating in cautious unison. And as the night edged toward dawn, we realized that the end of betrayal might be the start of something neither of us had thought possible: forgiveness. ChatGPT. We watched the first pale light of morning stretch across the living room, hesitating at our windows like it wasn't sure whether to come in. I sank back onto the couch, muscles knotted with exhaustion and something tender I almost dared to call hope. Mara beside me sat stiffly, as if she'd forgotten how to lean into comfort. The air between us was quiet, but heavy with the promise of what we'd agreed to. I rubbed my temples, the ache of sleepless nights still humming behind my eyes. My phone lay on the coffee table, its screen dark, but I knew it wouldn't stay that way. Eventually, Ryan's name would light up with missed calls or messages. When it did, I'd have to speak to him, to hear his voice and decide if he still deserved a place in my world. But for now, I let the silence cradle us. Mara finally reached out, her hand brushing mine. I flinched, remembering the sting of her betrayals, but then I felt her warmth, hesitant and real. "I'm scared," she murmured, voice barely above a whisper. My chest tightened as I nodded, words catching in my throat. "So am I admitted, my voice raw. A tremor ran through me, fear of letting her back in, fear of losing her forever if I pushed too hard, but also fear of never finding closure. She studied my face, vulnerabilities mirrored in her eyes. "I want to fix this," she said, "not because I deserve forgiveness, but because I miss us, everything we used to be." I swallowed, feeling my throat go dry. The memory of our easy laughter and late-night confessions surfaced, and I realized how badly I wanted to believe her. We spent the next stretch of morning gathering the scattered pieces of our relationship. Old photographs I'd stored on a shelf got dusted off. Ticket stubs from concerts and coffee shop receipts from our first two late dates found their way back into view. Each little artifact brought a pulse of nostalgia and pain through my veins. My hands shook as I held them, like I was touching ghosts. Mara crouched beside me and picked up a torn movie stub. "Remember when we stayed past the credits, just to hear the music again?" she asked, voice soft. I managed a tight smile. My heart fluttered at the memory of her head resting on my shoulder. "Yeah," I said, voice catching. "We thought the world was endless. The words felt fragile on my tongue. We didn't tidy every last scrap of the past, but we laid things out honestly, which moments had meant more to each of us, which secrets still felt too raw to revisit. At one point, I realized I was gesturing wildly, heart pounding as I traced the arc of our story across the coffee table. My voice rose and fell with each confession, my anger, my loneliness after I'd locked them out, my fear that I'd never care the same way again. Mara listened, tears slipping down her cheeks, body trembling with each admission. When she spoke again, her voice was steadier. "I want to earn back your trust," she said. "I know I can't undo the hurt, but I can show you I'm here, truly here." My chest squeezed with the ache of longing and doubt. Could I let her in bit by bit? Could I risk new wounds for a chance at healing? In the hush that followed, the city outside stirred into wakefulness, distant horns, the hum of traffic. The world beyond our walls carried on, oblivious to the fragile peace we were forging. I inhaled, a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the tension uncoil in my shoulders. My palms were still clammy, but steadier than before. "I'm willing to try," I said, voice low but clear. The words tasted like both surrender and strength. Mara's hand closed around mine, gentle but firm. Relief and something like pride fluttered through me, pride in both of us for facing the wreckage instead of walking away. We sat together as the dawn deepened, two silhouettes side by side, bound by the unseen threads of trust we were tentatively weaving anew. In that quiet space, I realized our story was far from over. And as the world beyond our windows slipped into full day, I understood that forgiveness wasn't an endpoint but a path, one we would walk together, step by careful step. We sat together as the dawn turned the walls from gray to soft gold, fingers still interlaced. I took a slow breath, feeling the weight of last night's honesty settle around us like a promise. Mara squeezed my hand and stood, stretching out the stiffness in her limbs. "I'll text him," she said, voice small but determined. I nodded, heart thudding at the thought of Ryan's reply. She tapped away on her phone, eyes downcast. Moments later, it buzzed, "Meet me at the bench by the park. Today. Noon. R." I read it over her shoulder. The bench under the old oak where we'd planned summer picnics. My stomach clenched. I met her gaze. "You ready?" she asked. I let out a breath that turned to a whisper. "As ready as I'll ever be." By midday, the sun was warm on my back as we approached the bench. Ryan was there first, pacing, shirt untucked, fingers twitching against his thigh. When he saw us, he froze, his guilt warring with relief in his eyes. Mara stepped forward, shoulders squared. I stayed a step behind her, arms folded. He ran a hand through his hair. "Alex," he began, voice cracking. I watched his chest rise and fall, the same rhythm that once felt like home. Mara laid a hand on his arm. "Tell her everything," she said, eyes steady. He exhaled, shoulders sagging. He spoke of threats at work, emails he'd deleted, late-night meetings he'd hidden, and how fear had twisted his love into lies. I felt both anger flare and sorrow bloom, the contradictions coiling inside me. When he finished, silence wrapped us. I glanced at Mara, then back at him. "Thank you for telling me," I said, voice thick. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a step. He nodded, tears glinting. We sat on either side of him, three of us on that wooden bench, the city humming around us. In that quiet circle, I realized our reckoning was no longer mine alone. It was ours, an imperfect truce under the oak's broad branches, where trust might grow again, one honest day at a time. We had fallen into a routine that felt both comforting and strange. Some mornings, we'd share coffee at the old oak bench, words tumbling into the glow of sunrise. Other afternoons, I'd send him a text asking about deadlines, and he'd reply with honest updates, no hidden meanings, no coded lies. Mara and I would debrief later, our laughter edged with relief. It was like treading water in a calmer sea, still wary of sudden storms, but learning that peace could exist. One evening, we agreed to meet at that cafe where I first drafted Project Reckoning. I arrived to the soft hum of the espresso machine, its hiss a gentle soundtrack to hope. Mara was already there, tapping her finger against a chipped mug. Her eyes met mine and I gave a small, tentative smile. She gestured to the booth, and we slid in. The table between us held half a dozen photographs we'd clipped to track our progress, pictures of shared smiles, receipts from group dinners he'd paid for, an image of the three of us tossing a frisbee in the park. Each photo was a quiet proof that something was rebuilding. He joined us minutes later, running a hand through his hair and apologizing for being late. His voice was steadier now, and his aura less frantic. He handed me a small gift bag. I raised an eyebrow as he mumbled, "For the next chapter." Inside was a notebook bound in soft leather, blank pages awaiting our story. A tremor ran through me as I touched its cover. It felt like a promise. We spent the next hour scribbling down things we wanted to say to one another if fear didn't catch our voices, what we would do differently, what we'd learned about trust, and small adventures we hoped to share. I suggested a morning hike. Mara insisted on a late-night movie marathon. He promised to teach me to bake bread, something he'd loved as a kid. Each plan was a stitch in the fabric we were weaving together. Later, as we walked back through the quiet streets, the sky darkening into indigo and the street lamps flickering on, I felt a sense of cautious contentment. Mara slipped her arm through mine, and I felt the gentle press of her shoulder. Ryan walked a few steps ahead, scanning his phone for a route that would drop me off. At a corner, we paused under a flickering lamp. Then my phone buzzed. My chest tightened. I pulled it from my pocket and froze. A single message in our group chat, "Hope you're not forgetting me tonight." It was from a number I didn't recognize, no name, just that taunting line. The timestamp was just minutes ago. My breath caught and my hand trembled. Mara and Ryan looked back, eyebrows raised. I forced a laugh and tucked the phone away, keeping my voice light, "Just some spam, I think." But my heart pounded. Beneath that teasing line lay a threat I hadn't anticipated, someone who was still watching us. I realized we hadn't seen the last of the shadows from our past. Ryan stepped closer, voice low, "Are you okay?" My gaze flicked between the dark screen and his worried face. I hesitated, knowing this moment would test the fragile trust we'd built. The hush between us expanded, heavy with possibility. Mara reached for my hand, her touch steady. "We'll handle it," she said softly. But the knot in my stomach tightened. This message was more than spam, it was a reminder that secrets belonged to no one entirely, that the world could still reach in and disrupt our fragile peace. I swallowed and looked at them both. "I need to see who this is," I said. My voice sounded firmer than I felt. They nodded, eyes solemn. As I unlocked my phone again, the screen glowed like a challenge. Somewhere out there, someone had thrown a pebble at our glass house, waiting for the cracks to widen. And in that instant, I knew our next act wouldn't be about forgiveness or rebuilding. It would be about protecting what we'd fought so hard to save. I stared at the message again, thumb hovering over the screen. My breath felt too loud, echoing in my ears like a warning alarm. Mara and Ryan waited, tension pooling around us like thick fog. My stomach twisted and I felt a chill run along my spine as I tapped the conversation to reveal the sender details. It was a number I recognized but had blocked months ago, their old coworker who'd vanished after the scandal. His name flashed at the top of the chat as unknown hashtag. I swallowed, throat raw. The street lamp flickered behind us, shadows leaping across the pavement. My heart hammered so hard I thought Ryan would hear it drumming in his chest. Ryan moved closer, his presence a mix of comfort and anxiety. Mara's fingers dug into my arm, nails pressing sharp reminders of solidarity. I scrolled the chat with trembling fingers until I found the earlier messages. "Hope you're not forgetting me tonight," followed by a string of emojis that felt like a mocking grin. Then a link to a blurred image. I tapped it and recoiled, a snapshot of our three silhouettes from 2 nights ago at the park bench. Snow dusted our shoulders, the tall oak standing behind us like a sentinel. My mouth went dry. "You took this?" I whispered. Ryan shook his head. "No. I never let my phone near me. Mara's breath hitched. I don't either, she said, voice small. Someone's been following us. A cold knot tightened in my gut. I realized our little bubble of rebuilding had been pierced. We stepped into the nearest cafe, its bell jingling above the door. The warmth hit me like a wave. Inside, the barista looked up, distracted by a newspaper. I waved to him as if nothing was wrong and we sat at a corner table. My hands still shook. I looked at Mara. We need to figure out how he got that photo, I said, voice hard but hushed. Ryan tapped the table with a controlled patience. He's dangerous, he said. He was obsessed with me after I exposed our project. He blamed me for losing his job. I felt my chest tighten. I'd forgotten that detail, buried under the drama of our betrayal. This man had motive beyond jealousy. He had rage. Mara's eyes went wide, tears threatening again. He's proven he'll cross lines, she whispered. My jaw clenched. Then we fight back, I said. My voice surprised me, low and fierce. I felt the heat of adrenaline flood my veins and crackle under my skin. We laid out our evidence on the table, the screenshot of the number, the blurred image, and the text. With each document, I felt my resolve solidify. It wasn't just our hearts at stake anymore. It was our safety. Ryan suggested we contact the police. I shook my head. First, we handle this ourselves, I said. We set a trap. Mara leaned forward, eyes shining with fierce energy. We can use his obsession, she said. He wants us to respond. We flood him with alternate meeting details, rigged to surveil him. Ryan nodded slowly, impressed. I pictured it, him showing up at a fake location while we watched. My palms went slick. My jaw felt tight and my vision tunneled on their faces, two allies in the war I'd ignited. I inhaled, that knot in my chest loosening into purpose. Let's do it, I said. But we plan every detail. No mistakes. We spent the next hour plotting, creating fake social media posts, a burner phone line, a decoy address. Mara's voice trembled with excitement and fear as she sketched a map of surveillance points. Ryan organized the schedule on his phone, voice calm and measured. And me, I found myself smiling, adrenaline and fellowship weaving a strange calm through me. When we stepped back outside, the night had deepened, swallowing the streetlights in pools of shadow. My heart was still pounding, but it pounded with conviction. I realized our story had shifted from betrayal and forgiveness to strategy and solidarity. The enemy wasn't just a threat to my trust, he was stalking our lives. I slipped the fake phone into my pocket and linked arms with Mara and Ryan. The city around us felt alive with potential. I breathed in the cool air, chest lifting with a new determination. We had a plan. We were united. And as we walked forward under the oak-lined boulevard, I knew the reckoning wasn't over, it had just taken a darker turn. I gripped the burner phone in my coat pocket as we stepped onto the cracked concrete, feeling the cold metal press into my thigh. The warehouse loomed under the street lamp's glare, its broken windows like watchful eyes. Mara's hand slipped into mine, her fingers trembling, but determined, and the copper tang of adrenaline coated my tongue. Ryan's flashlight cut swaths through the darkness, revealing graffiti-stained walls and scattered debris. My heart thundered so loud I could almost hear it in my ears, every nerve alight with the weight of what was coming. We paused at the chain-link gate, rust eating through the metal. Mara crouched, breath misting in the chill, and worked the lock pick with shaking hands. Tap, click, release. The gate groaned open, and we slipped inside as it swung shut behind us with a hollow clang. My legs went wobbly for a moment, the knot in my stomach tightening. We traced the warehouse wall until we found the side door, its metal warped but giving way under Ryan's push. Inside, the stench of stale oil and dust hit me like a wave. We crouched behind pallets, waiting in a hush broken only by our ragged breathing and the distant hum of a lone engine. Time stretched. Then headlights flickered outside, and my breath lodged in my throat. A car rolled to a stop and the driver climbed out, hunched, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. My pulse spiked. There he was, our old co-worker, the one obsessed with revenge. He stomped to the door, muttering curses, and extracted a memory stick from the bag. A blue LED blinked on a dusty panel, and the door clicked open. He slipped inside. I signaled, and Mara followed, Ryan right behind. Shadows swallowed us as we advanced, the beam of our flashlight bouncing over crates and machinery. His footsteps rang out as he moved deeper, oblivious to our presence. My chest tightened as I watched him near a stack of pallets. Muscles coiled. My jaw clenched until my teeth ached. I stepped from cover and flicked my flashlight at his face. He froze. I kicked a loose plank at his feet. "Stop," I said, voice rough. He startled, eyes wide. Ryan burst forward, tackling him to the dusty floor. The duffel's contents spilled, wires, notebooks, a tangle of plans. Mara knelt, scooping up scattered papers as I hovered, heart pounding. He struggled beneath Ryan, spitting curses. "You ruined me," he snarled, voice raw. My pulse thundered. I knelt and picked up a torn page, our names crossed out in red ink, a hit list. Fury and fear knotted in my chest. I pressed the paper in my sweaty palm. "Your obsession ends now," I said, voice low. Sirens wailed in the distance, slicing through the warehouse gloom. He froze, eyes flicking from me to Mara to Ryan. The sirens grew louder, red and blue lights flooding through the shattered windows as officers swarmed in, flashlights carving paths through the dust-laden air. I rose, legs unsteady, and watched as Ryan released the stalker into the arms of waiting police. He lay there, shoulders sagged, menace drained from his gaze. Relief washed through me, fear melting into cautious hope. Mara slid beside me, pressing her shoulder against mine, breath evening out. Ryan stepped back, voice quiet over the radio, "We've got him." Under that harsh spotlight, we stood 3 against 1, our shadows stretching on the cracked floor. I felt the tension drain from my shoulders, each breath filling the space where dread had pulsed. In the flash of police lights, I realized we'd faced the darkest echo of betrayal, not the lies between us, but a threat to our very lives, and we'd emerged together. My chest eased, heart slowing. The night had tested us, but it hadn't broken us. Outside, the damp air hit like a benediction. We walked through the gate shoulder to shoulder, the city's distant hum welcoming us back. I looked at Mara and Ryan, faces drawn but resolute, and felt a quiet pride bloom in my chest. Our reckoning hadn't ended in vengeance alone, it had drawn us tighter, forging a bond tempered by fear and trust. As we turned toward the street lamps that would guide us home, I knew the next chapter awaited, and that whatever it brought, we'd face it as one. We turned away from the warehouse and stepped onto the empty streets, our boots splashing through puddles still shimmering under the street lamps. My lungs ached from the rush of adrenaline, and each breath felt too loud, rattling in my chest like a loose hinge. Mara walked beside me, gripping my arm like an anchor, her jaw set but her eyes bright with something I couldn't name. Ryan followed close behind, scanning over his shoulder as if the night itself might turn on us. We paused at the corner diner where we had our first coffee together after it all began, neon light coating the sidewalk in soft pink glow. Ryan pushed the door open and the bell tinkled overhead. The booths were empty, but the waitress offered us nods, familiar and gentle. We settled into a booth near the window, the vinyl cracked but warm. The waitress slid coffee mugs across the table without asking, her fatigue hidden beneath practiced care. I cupped the warm mug in my hands, feeling its heat soothe the tremors in my fingers. My reflection in the glass wavered and I looked away, heart still pounding. Mara mirrored my motion, swirling her drink as if stirring away doubt. Ryan sat opposite, eyes distant as he traced a drip of condensation down the side of his mug. Silence settled between us, but it felt more honest than any words I'd spoken recently. Finally, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I'm still shaking," I said, voice low and uneven. The words tasted like admission, like giving voice to fear I'd tried to bury. Ryan's gaze softened, and he reached across the table, fingertips brushing mine. The contact sparked warmth through my arm, a reminder that we were here, alive, together. Mara exhaled, shoulders loosening. Me too, she admitted, voice rough. Her eyes flicked to the window, where the street beyond lay quiet under the moon. I keep thinking we're safe, and then I remember that someone wanted to hurt us. Her words trembled, and she blinked back tears. I watched her chest rise and fall, every breath carrying guilt and resolve. I lifted my mug again, swallowing a swallow of bitter coffee that burned my tongue. But we fought back, I said, more to convince myself than anyone else. We didn't let him win. The words sounded hollow until I felt the truth settle in my chest, a fragile anchor against the tide of doubt. Ryan nodded and cleared his throat. We should figure out how to move forward, he said, and his voice broke at the end. I sensed he chose each word carefully, like stepping across broken glass. I can't just go back to pretending everything is normal. My heart clenched at that, remembering the lies that once built our routines. Mara leaned in, eyes steady. We don't have to go back, she said. We can build something new. Better, even. The word better hung between us, hopeful and frightening. My fingers tightened around the mug, knuckles whitening. I felt a tremor in my jaw as I chewed on the idea. We sat like that for a long moment, listening to the hum of the diner's fryer and the soft drip of the coffee machine. Outside, the night held its breath, waiting. I realized that this unspoken pause was as crucial as any confession. We were deciding together, without an audience, whether trust could grow from ashes. I set my mug down and exhaled slowly. I want to try, I said, voice steadying. But we need boundaries, and I need honesty. No hiding. My words felt like stakes hammered into the ground. Mara reached out and clasped my hand, her fingers warm and sure. Yes, she whispered. No more secrets. Ryan nodded, a small smile breaking through his fatigue. I'll do whatever it takes, he promised, eyes meeting mine with unguarded sincerity. For the first time since it all began, I believed him. The waitress returned with another round of coffee, and we raised our mugs, a silent toast to uncertain beginnings. The steam curled between us, blurring our reflections into one. Outside, the rain began again, gentle at first, then growing heavier. But inside that small booth, with our hands joined and our promises spoken, I felt a stillness unlike any fear, like the calm after a storm, fragile but whole. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds in soft stripes, painting the living room in pale gold. I sat on the edge of the couch, breathing in the hush of a new beginning. My hands were steady as I reached for my phone, no burner numbers, no hidden threads, just my own contact list. I typed a simple message to Ryan and Mara, ready when you are. A few minutes later, they appeared in the doorway, smiles tentative but genuine. We had planned this, a day together without secret agendas, starting with the little farmer's market down the block, the place where Mara and I used to wander on weekends, long before shadows crept between us. I slipped my hands into my coat pockets, feeling the cool morning air seep in, reminding me that we were alive and free of yesterday's burdens. At the market, stalls of fresh produce and baked bread stretched along the sidewalk. The scent of rosemary and cherry tarts drifted on the breeze. Mara paused at a stand selling wildflower bouquets and held up a bundle of daisies. For new starts, she said quietly. I nodded, watching her soft smile. I realized how much I'd missed these simple moments, the warmth of shared laughter, the comfort of familiar routines reclaimed. Ryan hovered nearby, carrying a small tote of greens. He watched us with an expression I could only describe as relief mixed with reverence, as if he were seeing us whole again for the first time. When he caught my eye, he gave a quick, shy nod, and I felt a ripple of something tender pass between us. No demands, no hidden pleas, only trust rebuilding itself, brick by careful brick. We wandered to the bakery stall where the baker remembered my usual order, a cinnamon swirl and strong black coffee. I exchanged a few words with her, feeling proud that I could laugh easily again. Mara playfully nudged me, teasing, "Look at you, social butterfly." I laughed, the sound bright and surprising to my own ears. Ryan joined in, and for a moment, everything felt right. Later, we stationed ourselves on a park bench under a towering oak, our oak, the one whose branches had sheltered planning sessions, confessions, and, once, their darkest betrayal. I watched the leaves sway in the breeze and realized the tree had endured every season just as we had. Mara glanced over, her blue eyes mirroring the sky. She reached out, brushing a crumb from my sleeve. Ryan followed, tucking a stray hair behind my ear. The gesture was small, intimate, and I let them both. We spent the afternoon talking, not about mistrust or fear, but about dreams we'd shelved. Mara spoke of opening a small bookstore. Ryan confessed he'd always wanted to learn guitar. I admitted I'd been writing again, filling pages with things I'd never had the courage to say. As they listened, I could feel the distance between us shrink, replaced by gentle expectation. When the sun dipped low, we packed our things and walked back through quiet streets toward home. My chest felt light, buoyed by the simple joy of being together without the weight of secrets. Outside our building, I paused and looked at both of them. The world around us faded, leaving only this moment suspended in soft twilight. "I'm proud of us," I said, voice low but steady. "For choosing this." They both smiled, eyes bright with acknowledgement. Mara nodded, head tipped, and Ryan reached out to squeeze my shoulder. No words were needed, our promise had been spoken in actions all day. Inside, we settled around the coffee table, the same one that had once held evidence of lies. Now it held mugs of tea and a single bouquet of daisies in a glass vase. I uncorked the notebook Ryan had given me, the one with blank pages still waiting. Together, we opened it to the first page and wrote one word each: hope, honesty, home. As evening shadows stretched across the walls, we leaned back, hands entwined on the table. The chapter of betrayal had closed, but our shared story continued, richer, more fragile, and infinitely precious. In that quiet room, with daisies on the table and pages unwritten before us, I understood that true reconciliation wasn't an end but a beginning, one we would write together, day by careful day, under the steadfast gaze of our oak and the promise of all tomorrows yet to come.